Jacksonville since I was drafted here. I've done nothing but give the city my all. I think everybody knows that. All I care about is winning, man. Everybody know that. I want to win. Straight up. Now, excuse my language, but everybody know that.
Jalen and I have always had a good, open relationship where we've always been able to talk. We sat down yesterday. We talked about, what's going on as far as he and I, and it's like anything else in this profession. It's behind us now. His focus is on playing and doing the best job for his teammates. My job being able to do the best job for the team. So, that's behind us right now.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on a Friday Eve. Max Kellerman to my left. Hello, good morning.
I love Friday Eve so much. You just brighten my day, Molly.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Hey, Stephen A.
Hey, how you doing? What's up, Max? How you doing, Molly?
Good, all good. All right, guys, let's pick it up here with the Jaguars cornerback Jalen Ramsey, who asked the team to trade him. He will play tonight, Thursday Night Football, against the Tennessee Titans. Stephen A., I want to start with you here. Is there any scenario where you can see the Jags and Ramsey working things out?
Well, yes, if they win football games. That's really what this comes down to. I think that ultimately what Jalen Ramsey has a problem with is the fact that the things that they're doing are not lending itself towards winning a football game. They've only won 2 of their last 14 games, and they're 0-2 on this season after the obvious collapse that took place last year. In both instances, what they did was invest primarily on the offensive side of the ball. After getting to the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago, they invested in Blake Bortles. That obviously didn't pan out. As a matter of fact, it was so bad that you're basically paying about $16.5 million for him not to be on the team this season. In the offseason, you go out, you acquire Nick Foles. 1 game in, a half in, this dude ends up getting himself hurt. He's going to be out at least the next 10 weeks. Meanwhile, you had an all-pro defense, or one of the elite defenses in football, with 6 different Pro Bowl players when you went to that AFC Championship game. And you really didn't take care of anybody along the way. Miles Jack just got his money. Malik Jackson got his money before last year, but that was pretty much it. There were a cadre of individuals on the defensive side of the ball that you ignored. And in the meantime, Jalen Ramsey is in the midst of getting paid $3.6 million. Now, while he's watching guys from his draft class get paid an exorbitant amount of money, keep in mind, even though they're offensive players, Ezekiel Elliott just got, $50 million in guarantees, over $90 million overall. Carson Wentz had $107 million in guaranteed dollars. Jared Goff got paid. They're all from Jalen Ramsey's draft class. And so if you're Jalen Ramsey, you're like, okay, I don't play offense, I play defense, but I'm considered arguably the best at what I do. So not only am I not getting paid, but we're not doing things that's going to help me get paid because we're not doing the kind of things that contribute to winning. The strengths that I have available to me, you ain't capitalizing off of that. The Jacksonville Jaguars have to do these things. They have to go about the business. Let this man play man to man. And by the way, invest in other people and find somebody that can be that can play quarterback for you, that can stay healthy. It's a lot to ask. It won't happen, but ultimately it's not impossible because he's still under contract with them until 2021. According to Adam Schefter, they were demanding at least 2 first-round picks or something very, very close to that. If they don't get that, then they're not going to let him go, and he's not going to have any choice but to try to figure out a way to work it out.
He's gone. It is not possible to fix this situation, and they ain't going to get 2 first-round picks for him. They might get a first-round. They might get a first-round pick for him, which is a haul. You get a first-round pick for a player who's going to get paid sooner than later, and that's a haul. But they ain't getting what they're asking for, and yet he's gone. And I don't even think this is about him and the coach, Stephen A., because listen, you did too, saw Tom Coughlin operate for many, many years. About certain things, he is stubborn. And I think this is really a Coughlin-Jalen Ramsey issue. And once you behave the way Jalen Ramsey has behaved on a Coughlin team, and remember, he ain't the coach. He's the big boss now. He is not only going to back up his coach, but he is not going to tolerate that in terms of the culture of his team from a player. Whichever side you come down on, well, Coughlin's too uptight, too rigid in the way he thinks about things, or Jalen Ramsey shouldn't have done what it doesn't matter, because Coughlin has the power here, and Jalen Ramsey is gone. There is no way he's going to stay on this team. Stephen A., even though the contact was incidental with the coach, I understand that there was contact, but I go back to the Giants teams with Tiki Barber and Jeremy Shockey. And by the way, if they win, those teams were winning. They had some winning seasons. They were pretty good. They didn't win the Super Bowl with those guys. That was after he got rid of them, which just reinforces Coughlin's belief in the way he does things. But First, Tiki Barber chirping. He was out of there. Then Jeremy Shockey got hurt and then started chirping. He was out of there. Won the Super Bowl without him. Jalen Ramsey, as I mentioned yesterday, there were players on those Giants teams who had issues with Coughlin, but they handled their business the right way in Coughlin's view, I think, and in the Giants' view. And they wound up forming a leadership council that met with Coughlin, and he had to bend a little bit because the job he was doing, he was on the hot seat. He realized he had to compromise, and he did. But he wasn't compromising. He's not the type to compromise with someone who's behaved the way Jalen Ramsey has behaved. This is unmendable. Ramsey's out of there.
Well, let me say this to you, Max, and I think this is an important point to bring up. The Jacksonville Jaguars, when they went to the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago and lost to the New England Patriots, a game that some would say they should have won and clearly were in position to win, that's the only time they've been to the postseason since 2007. Some of their better years was with Tom Coughlin as their coach, which is why they brought him back in an elevated role. But the reality is that all of those years that the Giants were missing the playoffs, even though obviously they won 2 Super Bowl titles with Coughlin and Eli Manning, Coughlin was the coach when they were missing the playoffs too. He goes to Jacksonville, and some of these issues that he has had are things that plagued him and led to his departure and him being scapegoated by the New York Giants. At some point in time, don't y'all have to wonder as to whether or not Jalen Ramsey has actually done the right thing by highlighting his level of frustration and angst towards this organization? Because even though they may have the power, let's be clear, ultimate power lies with ownership, and ownership knows you can't win without players. What are you doing to attract players? What are you doing to bring the right players to a franchise? And once you have them there, what are you doing to max out their potential? These are legitimate questions to ask of an organization that only has 1 playoff appearance since 2007.
Agreed. Let me address that. Number one, Jalen Ramsey probably don't want to be there either. Like, let's not get it twisted. Like, Coughlin says he's gone and he's the boss and he's gone. Though I believe that's true. I'm sure Jalen Ramsey's like, get me out of here. I'm not going to play for this dude. And I believe we're talking about Coughlin and not Marone, in my opinion, and from my view. So it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. That's another reason I think it's over, because I don't think either party wants each other. That's one. Two, when Coughlin was coach of the Jaguars originally, they were an expansion franchise. So he could really put his hands on the culture. When he got to the Giants kind of basic point of view from ownership down jibed with the way Coughlin did things, but never would I claim, and I was on New York radio at this, in these years, never would I claim Coughlin's way is the best way, is the optimum way. He's not Bill Belichick, even though he beat him twice in the Super Bowl. Let's not get it bent. But Coughlin does have a consistent point of view, which has shown to work. And now he comes back to a Jaguars team where he wants to reestablish a culture. It's not an expansion team anymore. He's got to put his hands on it and change it, make it into his kind of team. Ramsey is not his kind of player.
But here's where I would challenge you. It's not like there is upward mobility taking place before our very eyes. I think the thing that could potentially work against Coughlin, which is why I brought it up, because you don't know what the Jacksonville Jaguars, from an ownership perspective, might decide to do. You got to take into account the fact that you just went to the AFC Championship game. You kind of had it there, and you've lost it. That's different than ascending, but not quite getting there. Mm-hmm. You were there, and in a span of a year to 2 years, it all fell apart because of personnel decisions that you made that were very unfavorable in the eyes of a lot of those personnel that you already had in place. Those are the kind of things that you have to pay attention to. And I'm not saying, again, it's a long shot, but when we ask the question as to whether or not what's possible, whatever, I'm thinking about the fact that they got Jalen Ramsey's rights, not to mention the fact that, the other guys around him might not be impressive, and ownership might get to a point where they might say, we might be better off leaning in this direction instead of this direction.
Yeah, I wonder if part of the reason Jalen Ramsey wants out is because Gardner Minshew will be at the helm tonight. And if you play fantasy, I'm sure Leonard Fournette will be getting a lot of carries on Thursday Night Football. We'll leave it there, gentlemen. 2 of the NFL's biggest stars face off on Sunday night. Does OBJ or Aaron Donald need a bigger game in primetime? Can't wait for that one. First Take just getting started.
Everybody listen up. I'm taking First Take on